All right, folks, we are blasting through media days, the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC this week, number one, through college football. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, striking up the live stream on a Friday afternoon. We got James Coleman on the line from Gridiron Now and Sports Den Live. James, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing good. Trying to stay dry here in Florida's rainy season.
A lot of rain today?
Yeah, just off and on. This is what it's known for. We're about to get in our hurricane season. Up north, y'all have snow. We have hurricanes. Everybody's got something. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah, there is no perfect place. There's a lot of really good places out there. No perfect place. Yeah, this is our best time of year right now because it's if you like hot weather, a lot of people complain up here because it's 85 or 90, but it doesn't bother me. And yeah, May to September is really nice. But yeah, then we get blasted. Willie Taggart making his appearance at his first ACC kickoff. Brought a couple players with him in Cam Akers and Brian Burns. We talked just briefly before we started on the live stream here, and James, you are pretty happy with what he had to say, and it wasn't necessarily the typical coaches speak, but it was things that you could take and kind of match up with where you see this program and where you see this team.
Yeah, it was he came in, he showed his personality and how he kind of could blend in with the coaches. I mean, the ACC has brought in a lot of young, and you have some established coaches where you have like Mark Richt, you've got Dabo, you've got I can't even think of his name, Virginia Tech. You've got a lot of guys that they've kind of inserted in that have had some success. And when you see Willie Taggart go into the ACC media days, you don't see him walk in as a guy who has to take a step back for anybody. I mean, he kind of walked right in, and you can see the energy, you can see the electricity coming from him, as a lot of times people are more taken aback. And you saw a guy who actually does not mind talking with the media, as opposed to what media has been known with FSU in the past, with Jimbo taking a more Saban-esque type approach and being very controlled with his with what he says. But Willie kind of just went out there, laid it out, very complimentary. But also at the same time letting it be known that he plans on bringing FSU right back to where they were.
And that's what a lot of coaches' strategy is during these media days. It's to show up, not say anything stupid, to avoid the controversy. If there's anything thrown out that they can avoid or say in some kind of politically correct or political kind of way, and avoid any kind of controversy, and get their players there that are most likely going to represent the team. They've got to be players, but also represent the team, not say anything stupid, and let's get out of town. So with Willie Taggart, what were the specifics about what you liked, the energy there, but in terms of the specifics, what did you like?
Well, I'll tell you this. The biggest thing is when he was discussing the current FSU regime, like him, and discussing the past, he did not say us and them. He said we. Even when he was describing Jimbo Fisher's team, he was describing we. We lacked accountability. We lacked energy. We quit during times. But then he also said we are changing it, and he showed the different ways he's changing it. Discussed Coach O, the strength and conditioning coach, talked about the lethal simplicity, talked about, he wants to be able to score points, different things like that. So that was the biggest thing that stood out. Is it's easy, and in today's day and age, you always talk about, what the other people did, and when things aren't successful, it's always the past. But to see a guy come in and automatically, hey, I'm going to take claim of all of that. This is my program now, and we're not gonna rest on the laurels of what they did in the past, good or bad. We're going to take ownership of all of that, and moving forward, we're going to do. This is how we're going to do. And they talked a lot about the culture. And I think that's the first way to establish an accountability culture, is to take accountability over the things that aren't even necessarily your fault, and just take ownership of it and then move forward. We used to have a saying that embrace the suck. Yes, it's situations that we can't have control over, especially when you're doing your training for people who've never gone through it. Yeah, it's 95, 100 degrees outside. It's nothing we can do about that. That's not going to change. We still have a task at hand, and that's kind of the mentality that Coach Taggart and the staff are trying to put into FSU, as well as the fans, and that was the theme that I saw in the media days.
And these coaches hit the media, and they're not necessarily just addressing that reporter. They might be addressing their team. That's basically their concern, is to address their team in whatever avenue they need to, or future recruits. And so it speaks volumes of his character, but also his wisdom, his intelligence in taking over this program, because he's got to sell and have the players that are there that were not recruited and signed by him embrace the buy-in and go from there. So you hear that from time to time, that players will think, okay, that coach is coming in and he's not necessarily enamored with me because I wasn't a guy that he went after, and maybe could have been recruited by him, but I wasn't, and now I've got to prove myself to him. And I'm sure that's still going to be in play, of course. The proof is going to continue and did start in the spring, but at least he's saying, this is my team, these are my players. There's no separation between the guys that I'm going to be signing and just did sign versus the guys that have been here. It's my team. It's my team. It's our team. We're all together.
It was something when I was doing my research on Willie Taggart, originally for the University of Florida, when the rumor was going around that he was one of the guys that they were going to go target and look after. And I was doing my research on him and got enamored with him when he was a prospect for Florida. So I always tell people my admiration for Willie Taggart has nothing to do with him signing to FSU. I'm going to do my job covering the ACC and covering FSU in particular, whether it would have been Willie Taggart or anybody else. But I joke, had Willie Taggart gone to the University of Florida, it would have put me in a predicament. But there was something that he said when he first got to Oregon. He said, it's your job, to the players, is your job to, go out there every day and compete for your roster spot. And it's my job to go out there every day, coach you up, but also find other young men to come and take your roster spot. He's like, if you do your job right and I do my job right, we're going to win a lot of football games. He's like, and that's only fair. So to hear that, I'm like, man, that is just, I've never heard it. It's common sense, you would think, but I've never heard it put in those kind of terms. Your job as an athlete is to go out there, compete, be the best, bust your behind in the weight room, bust your behind in the classroom, bust your behind in the film room, and good things will happen for you on the field if you're athletic enough. That being said, you don't go to Florida State or to any Power 5 school for that matter, especially the top schools in the Power 5, to not play with the best of the best. Even at fullback, when I was at Florida State, every year they brought in another fullback to take my position. He just didn't. He just never did. So it's just you have to have that confidence. And if I would have gone somewhere else and they weren't bringing in that person, it would have probably not necessarily I would have slacked per se, but you don't have that iron sharpening iron. And going back to how this also shows in the effort in the media day with the ACCs, Cam Akers, they asked him point blank, how do you feel about having that much talent, that much young talent in the backfield at Florida State? And he talked about iron sharpens iron. He's like, anybody can go out on that field and get it done at any given moment, and that makes you better. And that's kind of, the mentality, and that was the tone that was set for FSU at ACC Media Days.
And back to the impressive aspect of Taggart, it's the key to communication that we see certain coaches, and the first one that comes to mind would be Butch Jones, who was released obviously at Tennessee. He recruited top 5 to 15 classes. He knows the game of football, although his strategy on the sidelines and clock management wasn't the best in key situations. But obviously the guy knows football. But he always sounded like he was selling a car. And maybe that works in certain circles. Maybe that works with boosters. Maybe that works with the alumni club. But when you're talking 18 to 22-year-old kids, it seems as though, based on the example you just gave me, this is one of the special aspects of Willie Taggart's connectivity to athletes, is that he's able to boil something down that really takes a high level of thinking and kind of emotional intelligence to be able to connect with somebody. But he takes it and he boils it down to a simple explanation that a 19-year-old can understand.
Right. It reminds me very much so of Coach Bowden. When I remember when I was coming in, and I didn't get young Coach Bowden. I got old Coach Bowden. But I've seen clips of young Coach Bowden, and it kind of reminds me of of Taggart right now. And this is the reason why Coach Bowden would come into meetings and say things like, in order to be successful in the passing game, the quarterback has to throw it to the wide receiver. Like, really, like, wow, that's earth shattering. Running backs, you got to run the ball. Defense, if the other team doesn't score, we win. So it's little simple things like that. Understand things if you don't understand those things. So that's kind of where you got to go first, is understanding the simplicity of it. So even with what Taggart's talking about with his lethal simplicity with our offense that he brought up again in ACC Media Days, it's not about bogging down guys and making things more difficult for difficult sake. It's about showing wide receivers, like, I want you to run the route this way, no matter what. This is when we call this play, this is what the hell we're going to run. Don't tag it. Don't run anything different. I want you to run this as full speed as possible. And then, again, so you just made the game simpler. So when the game is more simple, you can play it faster. And when players play it faster, it's very difficult to defend that at times because you know what you're doing. Offense should not be that complicated. Not on the collegiate level. On the pro level, they can do it, but even then, like I've seen it with the team I cover here in the NFL, the Jags. When we dumbed this shit down, we went to the third round of the playoffs. When it was overly complicated, we could barely win a game.
Yeah, so what's simple genius about what Bowden said about the passing game and the other aspects of it that you just broke down was he's basically giving the result of success. This is what the result is. The quarterback completes a pass to the wide receiver. And there's almost an underlying explanation of you're a team. You're a team. And so if the quarterback throws a perfect pass and the wide receiver drops it, then the quarterback shouldn't be like, hey, it's on you, man. No, it's only successful if you work together and you both do your jobs, and that's what the result needs to be. If you're a left tackle or you're along the offensive line and the running back gets thrown back in the backfield on a running play, well, you need to look at yourself because he didn't have a chance. Or if you didn't read the block correctly and you're the running back, well, your job is to run the ball. Your job is to do all the things that go into running the ball successfully. You didn't do that.
Right. And then that comes with the, liking your fellow teammate, fighting hard, and also just having a level of toughness. And that's kind of been something else that's been sort of talk about without being disrespectful. But you got to have with Coach O. I don't even know how to Ireland Otis. I don't even want to mess his name up because he's intimidating. And you heard Brian Burns talk about it, Cam Akers, as well as Coach Tag talk about that aspect of it. Because it really, at the end of the day, sometimes you lose games not because of scheme. You lose games because the other guy is 6'4", 275 pounds, and he runs a 4.5, and he's just tougher than you. So you have to train your body to be able to make those things happen.
All right, number of people watching on the live stream. I see tons of comments, but you guys are having your own discussion, which is fine. We are here to talk college football and making your shots at Florida State football. If you love Miami, I see that there, and also some Florida State fans jumping on, but with nothing in particular to say, which is fine. Again, it's the live chat. It's available to you, but I only remind you that we got James Coleman on the line from Gridiron Now, and if you've got any comments or questions from him, please have at it. I will monitor the chat, and we will get those to James. He joins us on a regular basis to break down FSU. 2018, James, it's only 6 weeks away. We're finally going to have football to talk about very soon. I'm sick of talking about 2017 and what might happen in 2018, and I'm sure that those guys at Florida State can't wait to have some 2018 facts and figures and play on the field to talk about.
Yeah, man, I'm so tired of talking about recruit. I'm so tired of talking about recruiting. I'm so tired of talking about last season. Here, are you there? You got me?
Yeah, you're kind of fading on me, but it looks like you're back.
Okay. Oh man. Uh-oh.
Hey, James, I can see you, but you're breaking up, and I can't hear anything.
Let me see if I took that off.
There you are.
Is that better?
I think you're good.
All right, yeah. It's freaking technology. You know, you put on your Wi-Fi to think that it's going to help, and you have your Wi-Fi and your cell phone, so something should work. But whatever. Anyways, but I'm so tired of talking about 2017 because it was a terrible year. One of the worst years that FSU has had since I've been alive. Right now, if you follow what we call Big Three Twitter, which is what you're getting right now, I'm assuming in the live chat. All it is you suck. You know, Miami won one game in 8 years, and I'm one of those guys that I'm not going to talk trash. You won. You're the victor. Good for you. But now all we can talk about is recruiting and past stuff. And I want to talk about with this 2018 season coming. But there's so many storylines and so many answers. I mean, so many questions that won't get answered until we actually see this FSU team take the field. And one of the things that is that's really going to be I really want to see is how will Doak look September 3rd? And I think it's going to be energetic. I think it'll be explosive. But what Virginia Tech team will come down here? They're running out of defensive backs to get in trouble. So, and luckily they got the quarterback back. But that game, no matter what comes out there on the field, will set the tone for what this FSU team will be. If it's a competitive game, high scoring, then, you know, and even whether it's a win or a loss with FSU, you should look out. If FSU comes out there and drums Virginia Tech, then man, it could be a lot of people can be put on notice.
James, off the top of my head, and I'm a nerd that remembers records and bowl results and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember Florida State having anything close to 7-6. Let's see, 10-3. We're going to be going for a while. 13-1, 14-0, 12-2, 9-4, 10-4, 7-6. 2009. I guess I do remember that one.
That was the old man's last year.
Yeah, 2009. Lost to Miami out of the gate, 38-34. BYU, 54-28 win. South Florida lost by 10. I remember that game. South Florida beating Florida State was just like mind-blowing at the time.
In Tallahassee, if I remember correctly,
yeah.
BJ Daniels, my friend, grew up with that young man. Became a legend for South Florida. Might have got drafted off of that one game, but he's a good kid. You know, good guy.
They were mostly close losses. Lost to Boston College by a touchdown. Lost to Georgia Tech by 5. Got bowl eligible late in the season. Lost to Florida. Ouch, 37-10. Obviously, that was a really good Florida team that finished in the top 3 in the country. Beat West Virginia in the Gator Bowl, 33-21. Yeah, Bobby Bowden finished off on the right note there against the Mountaineers at the Gator Bowl. So that would be the last 7-6.
And a lot of similarities to this 7-6. And obviously 7-6 gets you ousted at Florida State apparently, but a lot of tough losses. So that going back to 2017, and then having to relive the Miami loss. I think on Wednesday, ESPN was showing some of the top games from 2017. There are 3 of those losses FSU probably should have lost. It came down to the wire. I mean, I say that, but a loss is a loss. But came down to the wire. And even Jimbo admitted in the SEC media days at Texas A&M that maybe if he had a little bit more into it, you would have probably seen some more things. And it's come to light that he called that defense, that last defensive set in the Miami game, that, you know, possibly, well, Miami would have probably made a field goal to tie it up, but they would have definitely not scored a touchdown. So, which all you needed was a stop. But when you look at Louisville, all you needed was a stop, or, you know, an extra point on offense. Same thing with North Carolina State. So what you should see now going into 2018, if nothing else, is a team that's focused and a team that feels they should have their coach next year. Now, I will say this, and I don't think he was challenged enough on this. Now, I personally believe Willie Taggart's not going anywhere. I believe Willie Taggart is here to stay. He's found his home. This is his dream school. You can't do this. That being said, though, you can't, like, I get South Florida. There still is that what if, how do you silence the critics after only being at Oregon 1 year and coming over? Now, I believe it's different circumstances, but I'm shocked that nobody in the media maybe pushed that just a little bit more.
Yeah, I just got done ranking the coaches in all the Power Five leagues. I got to the ACC, and I got to tell you, James, in every league, there was a clear distinction, at least in my mind, going from level to level. In the ACC, Dabo number one, that was easy. And then after that, I could have made a case for just about anybody being 2 through 14 to a certain extent. It
Well,
was
I
difficult.
agree.
Then it was extremely. It was the closest league in terms of coaches and what they currently bring to the table, track record, considering the limitations on facilities and resources at places like Duke, things like that. So with Willie Taggart, obviously, I tried to emphasize what are you doing right now? What have you done at this school? Well, you can't do that with about 10 or 20% of the coaches, including Taggart. But to take Western Kentucky from 2-10, and they were a disaster, and they're going 7-5, 7-5 2 years later. He goes to South Florida, pretty much the same deal. It took him a year or two, and then suddenly they're going from 2-10 to 11-2 and finishing in the top 20. The Oregon year, you can't judge. It's pretty much what we would have expected just any competent coach to do. They were a decent team, but not really good, and he goes 7-5 and leaves. So I rank him right now at number 10, but that was just basically show me what you got here, and we'll go from there.
Well, no, I completely respect that. If I were to tell somebody he's a top 5 coach in the ACC, people would call me a homer. And I'll go into why I believe he is a better coach than 10 here in a second. But with guys like Dave Doran, I believe he's the second best coach in the ACC. That's North Carolina State's coach. What he's been able to do at North Carolina State is amazing. I'm personally shocked that that's not who Florida went for. That's not who some of these other schools went for. He has taken a school with clearly very limited resources and developed them into a consistent power. He got a nice little pay raise out of it, but I personally think he's a better coach than North Carolina State. No offense to NC State fans, I'm just being honest with you. You said Clemson, Boston College from a talent standpoint is probably one of the more talented teams in the ACC. Ironically, that's not me. That's me clearly saying based on draft statuses. They have more people with draft eligible grades on their roster than anybody in the ACC. So that would determine their talent level. But something about Taggart that I noticed, and I was challenged by a childhood friend of mine who was a Miami fan. And he just said, James, what is Taggart's offense done against Power 5 schools? Very valid question. Amazing question. And I didn't know the answer to it. And when I had to go do my research, I became more impressed. And people said, like, is taking his record and not looking at the totality of it, because at the end of the day, he is a below 500 coach. But when you look at the past three seasons, he's gone up against Power 5 schools with his offense. With South Florida, his last 2 years, I want to say last 2 years, he went up against, maybe last 4 years, went up against Power 5 schools. He's had one loss. That was to FSU. Excuse me. One loss when he was at South Florida FSU, but he's put up points. And before he lost his quarterback, Oregon was on pace to like set records. So when he lost his quarterback, that's when you started. I think they were 4-1 out the gate, and then you saw them go 500, and then they ended up correcting it to go bowl eligible. But now, what is that quarterback? That quarterback is considered a top 5 QB prospect in this upcoming draft. So Oregon went from not having anybody, and I always gotta tell people, this isn't Chip Kelly's Oregon that he took over. This was post Chip Kelly. So it had gone down. That was Lou Holtz. I mean, still not Lou Holtz, excuse me. That was Skip Holtz, South Florida, that he took over. That wasn't the South Florida that rose up again. The South Florida that beat FSU, that rose up to number 2 in the rankings. South Florida. That team that South Florida had taken a fall back. So you see a guy who goes in, takes over programs, puts them in a good situation. And the one thing I will say that is kind of refreshing about him and kind of shows to his character is that he works for that school until he's not at that school. So South Florida, he worked for South Florida all the way up until he became Oregon's coach. Not a okay, Oregon offered me on Monday, I'm going to stop everything I'm doing while I'm negotiating with Oregon. Now he keeps going as if that job is not even his. And you look at what South Florida was able to do with Charlie Strong. Immediately, I think they went 11-2 last year as well. When you look at what Oregon's being able to do now, as far in terms of recruiting, they've got a top recruiting. They got a top 10, I believe, right now recruiting class, and they have every reason to believe that they're going to be pretty good. So,
James Coleman on the line from Gridiron Now. You can also join him on his podcast, Sports Den Live, and I think we understand. So when you're separating Power Five or Group of Five, I do it all the time as well. We know that that's not the perfect ratio or the perfect metric, because obviously there are Group of Fives that are better than Power Fives, but 90% of the Power Fives better than the Group of Five. So it's just one way to measure it. So I'm looking at 2016 here, James, and Willie Taggart's South Florida team played 3 Power Fives. They put up 45 on Syracuse, 35 on Florida State, and 46 on South Carolina. That's pretty darn good.
And if you look at that Florida State game,
yep,
I mean, it was close.
We
Florida State didn't just blow them out. It took a amazing effort from Dalvin Cook for Florida. I think Dalvin Cook had over 250 yards rushing, but Quentin Flowers from South Florida also had an amazing game as well, running and throwing the ball. So it was just and that's kind of the thing that one of my critiques from Jimbo from an offensive standpoint is that when you don't go with what's working, you have to try. He tries to prove a point. So if the passing game ain't working, don't throw the ball. Let's just run it. That's cool. If the passing game is working and the running game ain't working, throw it 50 times. But when I went and I looked at the box scores and I looked at the breakdown, if you go look at the breakdown of some of these games, he's got 400 yards. I think one game he had 400 yards rushing. It was amazing. It was in 100 yards passing in 1 week. Then the next week it's 300 yards passing and 150 yards rushing. From a defensive coordinator standpoint, you don't really know what you're trying to take away, because even in the simplicity of the offense for the players, it's still very complex. So you have so many tags. So for example, let's just simple play 4 verticals. So you got all 4. Let's say you got a tight end. You got three wide. So 4 guys going on vertical passing. So your DBs have to honor that. So if they honor the run, then you're going to have somebody wide open. With that, you tag a run play with it. So let's say you have an inside zone out of the gun. So now you have the run motion. If your linebackers play the pass, you're going to run the ball. Now, in some strange world, they're able to ID the run, and they're able to play the pass. The quarterback, it's an RPO, so the quarterback can still keep the ball. So it's damn near impossible to always guess right. And the crazy thing is the minute they have success on that play, they're immediately getting to the line of scrimmage to run another play. So that's kind of one of the things that I think is going to change. The only setback is they got you'll know how well they're conditioned about week 5, week 6, because that's a complete change of pace from Jimbo run 65 to 70 plays if you can, to Tag, who wants to run 115.
Good stuff from James Coleman from Gridiron Now. You can also catch him on Sports Den Live. Of course, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the nation. And of course, as we've mentioned many times, James got the perspective of fan first. Then he hit campus as a player, 4 years at Florida State as fullback, 2002 through 2005, and then in the media covering Florida State, the ACC, and college football. Cam Akers, Brian Burns, anything out of those guys?
I mean, Brian Burns Brian Burns should be one of the best defensive ends in the nation if everything goes the way it's supposed to go. We only have 5 sacks coming down off of a year. I believe he had 9 his freshman year, so he took a step down. But right now, he'll be that guy. He talked about him and Kando. Kando's the opposite end, 6'7". I want to say he's 270 right now. Made some significant gains in the weight room. He's one of the guys that made the best comment about Coach O, the strength and conditioning coach, from anybody. You just don't miss. You just don't make mistakes. said, because if you don't do it, there is no the punishment. The punishment he overcorrects you. So that was one of the things. But just the way they handled themselves with class, and talking about the opponents, and it was a little bit different. I liked it. It was they brought some energy, and I think they set the tone. They represented the guys who were back there waiting very well. And one thing that also came out of that is DeAndre Francois is moving back into the football dorms. So that's a level of accountability that you would not have seen in previous years, to have a guy who's in his third year. No, excuse yeah, his fourth year, a fourth year player willingly coming back to spend time in the dorms, to be held to a level of accountability that he does not have to be held to.
Hey, James, when I look at the running back distribution, speaking of Cam Akers, who obviously there was much expected when he stepped on campus as the number one rated recruited running back in the nation, then obviously much was placed on him because of the quarterback situation. The offensive line wasn't the best. He still runs for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. Jacques Patrick's back. How do you expect the running back distribution to go in terms of workload?
I think you'll see 2013. If you look at FSU's 2013 stats, that's what you should see with this offense. Now, obviously, that was a national championship year. I'm not saying they're going to win a national championship, but you'll have a 1,200, 1,300 yard back, and probably more so Akers. You'll have one of the backs close to 1,000 yards. I personally think it'll be Laborn. That'll be the other guy. That'll be probably around the 800, 900 range. And then you'll see Patrick with probably, again, similar stats to what he has now. I want to believe it was like 650 or something like that that he had on last season on the ground. But and when I look at the running backs, they kind of all fit a certain mold. Akers does have that Devonta Freeman. He does have that Dalvin Cook type mold. Laborn does have a little bit of that Carlos Williams type mold. And Patrick kind of does have a little bit of a James Wilder Jr. type of running style. I think he's a little bit more downhill. But I think they're all disruptive, but also what they can do in the passing game as catching the ball out of the backfield is actually pretty good. All three of them are really good.
Jacques Patrick, 748 yards, 5.6 per carry, 7 touchdowns. I had gone away from the page, and it took me a minute to get it back. I'm glad you brought up Laborn. How do you pronounce his name? Do you know?
I think Kalen Laborn.
Kalen Laborn, that was asked about on the chat, and you've got him right there in the mix. He was the number one rated all-purpose back out of high school 2017. So you think he's going to be a major impact player?
Oh, man, yeah, one of the things that was interesting is you've got 3 young men on offense who are all extremely explosive that no Seminole fan really got any firm, really good excuse to why they didn't play at all. And that's Laborn, DJ Matthews, and Tamarind Terry. So, and all 3 of these guys should be able to come on the field. And what you saw from them in the spring game, and not just the spring game, what you heard about them last fall and what they did is just kind of amazing. And I call him my life coach. He had a saying on ESPN, and whoever ESPN's dump button person definitely got caught slipping. But he says, when you see a wide ass open hole, you hit that bitch. And I was like, that is life coaching right there. That is what you want your running back to be able to do. Again, simplicity, right? You see the hole, hit the hole. And that's what he's able to do. And when he accelerates, nobody's catching him.
James, just because I understand and know the inner workings there, I'm just curious. That was during the spring game?
Yeah, that was during the spring game. And when I saw that live, I was like, just doing radio, like that would have been boom, dump. But I'm like, okay, well, they let it go. And all right, that was fun. It was fun. I'm glad it got, but you got a chance to see his energy and just the joy and the happiness of being able to be on the field after not being able to be on the field the year before that. But that young man has entirely too much talent to not see the field. And there's guys like Rasul. There's a ton of depth at that running back position. Somebody, I mean, obviously Patrick, this is his last year, but somebody's got to go.
Yeah, just a little inside baseball, James. I would guess about 90% of those events are not delayed.
Yeah,
they are not delayed. More and more are becoming delayed, believe me, but they're not. And so I probably can't talk anymore about that, but I'll just let you know that. I'm trying to look for anything else on the live stream. So we are 2 weeks away from the boys hitting camp, and you can relate to that well. What positions are you most curious about? What can't you wait to get some kind of feel for or news out of camp about?
Well, obviously, the quarterback position, we're not going to learn about that till that's going to go all the way up until game day. But what you want to see is how well is the offensive line gelling? Who are the five? Who are the five they're going to trot out there? Are they any good? And are they getting better? Now they've gotten bashed, and rightfully so. But I learned a lot again doing some research. Very few offensive line in the nation are really just that great. But FSU's offensive line is much written about, much talked about, and it came about. I mean, a lot of stuff came on. But what I want to see is this wide receiver unit. Who are the three? I personally believe Naquan Murray is the linchpin with this. Nobody's talking about Nooney right now. And I get it. Terry had such a great spring. DJ Matthews is so electric. But Nooney is right now was the leading receiver last year. He's going to be he's got them. Obviously, he's coming in with the most yards of any wide receiver, but he is dynamic. He's a good wide receiver. They need a senior leader to be able to help mold these guys. If not, that's kind of taking you a step back, and you'll expect to see a lot of mistakes later on if he's not that guy. But Abusement Park and Jordan Young coming from out of Atlanta, a young man that I'm proud to say I helped FSU figure out, and I'm glad he came to us over Tennessee. And Treshawn Harrison from out in Seattle. Those are some guys that I think are going to be pretty good on that in the wide receiver core, which is really what you got to have if you're going to run a spread offense. You're going to run multiple plays. You got to be 3-4 deep at wide receivers with playmakers that guys are going to have to respect. If not, you're just trotting out bodies. And then also, I'm a little bit interested in this tight end position as well and how it's going to weave into what these players are going to do as well at with the passing game. So really, it's the offense. Defense, I have respect for the defense. I think the defense is going to do what it's supposed to do.
Got Big Game James 36 on the line. That's his Twitter handle. Please join him right there as he covers Florida State football, the ACC, and college football, and makes comments about all sorts of stuff, whatever hits him. And we have great respect for James as he comes on here as first fan, then player, and now media analyst covering Florida State football. Again, first and foremost, Gridiron Now, also Sports Den Live. James does a great job of jumping on here from time to time as we track him down to talk FSU. James, would love to have you back anytime. You can make some time for us, and we'll talk Florida State football as we work through August camp.
All right, sounds good to me.
All right. Would like to let everybody else know. I'll keep everybody on the line for just a second here that I've got schedule rankings coming up. We've got predictions, and I've got previews of the Power 5 coming up as well. NCIS Fanatic at 21 makes an interesting suggestion to have a 5,000 party. Party 5,000, meaning 5,000 subscribers to Mark Rogers TV. I've been on here now for 8 years. I've taken it seriously and really churned out the videos for about 4.5 to 5 years. And we have just kind of organically built this. I basically just get on here and I crank out college football analysis and just expect people to find me. Now I've taken a different bent in recent weeks. I brought a couple people on staff to help me with the marketing, the branding, the social media, and so forth to try to build it out faster. But it's been a upward climb that's taken some time. And yes, maybe we can celebrate 5,000 subs, and then we would wait until 10,000, and hopefully that will come much quicker as I was just checking the numbers. So thanks to you I've added about 350 subscribers in the last 30 days. That compares to about 130. So almost 3 times as many this time last year versus the last 30 days. Listen to these numbers here. So over the last 30 days, we've picked up 60,000 views. We actually had 69,000 views for the last 30 days this time last year. And the reason for that is because I was cranking out about 5 times as much content, if you can believe that, because I was doing all the editing of the discussion. So actually, I'm gaining much more viewership per episode than I was. So I'm not considering that a step back, because I expected that. If you're releasing 200 videos and now you're releasing 50 in a month, there's going to be a drop off. But per view, per segment, much more people watching. So thank you. 1,400 plus subscribers added this year compared to about 800 at this point last year. Like I say, 340 in the last 30 days compared to 153 at this time last year for the last 30 days. And this is the thing that's just staggering to me. 9,510 comments in the last 30 days compared to 382 at this time for the last 30 days of 2017. So appreciate you guys jumping on board. We got Leon jumping on. He's got the chips. So, Leon, you got to check with everybody in regards to chips. For me, I do this at the cafeteria at work. I get myself a chicken wrap, and then they ask, what sides do I want? And I still haven't been able to get myself to choose the carrots and the pickle, or the carrots and the other vegetable. I still go chips and a pickle, and the chips are the Ruffles. I love the Ruffles. So, James, if you can get, or who was that? It was Leon. Leon, if you can get the Ruffles for me, and then whatever you guys want past that, I'll be a happy man. My first ever video was about the 2010 Big Ten Bowl wrap-up. Yes, it was. And I posted that as Throwback Thursday a couple weeks ago, and some folks had some fun with that. Again, I mentioned earlier today that I would love to be able to go in reverse of my list of subscribers to see who the first ones were, to see if anybody's still on the line. Well, I guess they are. If they're still subscribers, then they're still part of Mark Rogers TV, to see who those folks are, to give them an extra solid thank you. So yeah, what else do we have in here? Anything else to knock around? You guys were talking some Nebraska football, and we will talk to some Nebraska football here very soon. Schedule rankings to come, followed by previews and predictions for 2018. And of course, I will be live Sunday at 4, Monday at 6, Wednesday and Thursday at 7. At the very least, you guys know me better than that. I'm going to be live a whole lot more than that. But when I'm not live, trust that I'm working on previews, predictions, and schedule rankings to be released here very soon. We need to have Zoe1219 on here to award our winner of our first ever Mark Rogers TV showcase prize of swag. Most likely going to be the bling, depending on what that individual selects, for getting me the most subscribers between June 15th and July 15th. What else do we have going on, people? I didn't want to let the live chat go quite this quickly, but I thought the conversation with James was extremely good. He always gives us some insight into the inner workings of the huddle, the game planning, and how things work on both sides of the football, especially on offense. And he did it again today with Willie Taggart and Florida State. If you guys would like to comment to this particular video, obviously do that with whatever's on your mind. But in addition to the comment that you were going to leave, I would love for you guys to give me a Florida State record this year overall and versus the ACC. Don't do it in the chat. Please do it as a comment to this video. Would love to know what you have to say about Florida State's final record for 12 games and their 8-game ACC final record. Mine's going to be released here in the next few weeks. All right, guys, I believe we've done enough damage. I appreciate it so much. NCIS Fanatic 21. I will jump on the suggestion of bringing on Max Baxendell. Max Baxendale. We already do have somebody from Bucknuts, of course, Steve Hillwagon, but we will ask Max to be on as well. Big Ten Media Days next week, along with the Pac-12 on Thursday. I will be specifically asking Tony Siracusa from Last Word on College Football how the Pac-12 believes that it can pack 12 coaches and players, all 12 teams, into one media day. They're basically telling the world we're inferior. We only need one day of exposure. I explained to Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football the other night, if you guys caught this, I'm not going to re-explain it, the number of reasons why this sends the worst message, and it also logistically and financially long-term, and in terms of the popularity of the sport for your conference, is a stupid decision not to blow it out for 3 or 4 days. The expense added in bringing 30 or 35 coaches and players and the various sports information directors that have to travel. So we're talking about 70 or 80 people to a particular site, and that is funded by the particular schools. It is not a major expense to the Pac-12 to blow out media days for 3 or 4 days and not one day. The message is sent that the Pac-12 is playing inferior football and is an inferior product and not as popular as the other leagues. That's my take, and I will ask Tony Siracusa about it, as he is going to be reporting for us from Pac-12 Media Days on Wednesday night, right there from, I believe it's in Los Angeles this year, as it has been in the past. Oh, okay, NCIS Fanatic 21, Matt Baxendale. And there you go. Who's the list? Top 10 defensive coordinators in the ACC. Yeah. One day will be so expansive here at Mark Rogers TV that beyond the coaches and the quarterbacks and the positional player rankings, we will be rating offensive and defensive coordinators as well. And that will get 13 views, except for you hardcore folks. All right, everyone, I appreciate the support. We are headed toward 5,000 and maybe a party if NCIS Fanatic 21 gets his way. We will see you next time, Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, if not sooner. More college football talk right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. See you next time.